PM, madam.
Halo.
Halo.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Sir, this is first batch.
Good afternoon, sir.
Sorry, I didn't hear.
This is Krupalini College, sir. New batch.
Yes. Okay. All right.
You can start, sir.
Okay. I think we can get started then. All right. Okay. More people will be joining, right?
No, bro, madam.
Yes, sir, they are joining, sir.
Okay, fine, fine. Okay, whoever joins, that's fine. But I think we can get started, and then whoever joining is joining, right? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So today, okay, good afternoon, everybody. I think this is a new batch, and I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Soumyajit. I will be taking your classes on various different topics, which is more related to the industry and what's happening relevant to the industry. Right. So in today's class and also in the future classes, we will be listening to a lot of videos. We'll be seeing how the various industry experts are talking about the relevant trends, etc. And at the same time, we will be picking up topics which will be helpful for you in your day-to-day lives as a student, either when you're applying for a job, or there are certain recent trends which you need to keep in mind as you're looking into the various opportunities. So all these different various topics and industry trends is what we will look at, right? So I mean, at any point in time, if anybody has any questions while the classes is going on, you can ask, you can chat, you can raise your hand, you can ask the question, or even after sessions, if you have any questions, you can consolidate and share, and we all will be happy to answer. So yeah, so that's how we will go about it. So today's class is going to be more about some emerging trends in the technology world, which one should be all aware of, right? And I know here a lot of you will be having different courses and streams that you would have taken, but the trends that are emerging in the technology world kind of remains constant. So hence it is applicable for everybody, right? We will see that and we'll hear what those trends are. And during the video presentation, we will also talk a little bit more about what each of these opportunities are, could be, or what these trends could be, how many of them you may actually already be using, or you can probably look at using in the future. But I think it's good information for all of you to understand what are these emerging trends in the industry, because this is very, very critical for you to determine which options will you take in terms of your career, or in terms of your studies, or in terms of your projects, etc., and stuff like that, right? A lot of you maybe already be familiar with a lot of these names, and which is fine, right? But it's still good to know that what's going to be the future with these trends. And having said that, I will share my screen. So, and I will be playing the video as well. Okay. And just let me know if you're able to see my screen right now.
Yes, sir.
Yes. And just let me know if you're able to hear the voice. The voice is audible?
Audible.
Okay, great. So if the voice is audible, I think we will start playing this video where we will talk about welcome to tech trends, the various tech trends that are very important to keep in mind. We will see few very emerging technologies and the very latest technologies in OpenAI or pair programming or GPT, the data build tools, etc. What are these latest technologies that is very, very important for all of us to remember? Then we will talk a very little bit about artificial intelligence and what artificial intelligence tools are, which is becoming very important. We'll also talk about Web3, and we'll talk about some other stuff as well, right? So this is how we will schedule our classes, and we will see what is the author saying, and what is this video all about, and what are we all learning together, right? So let me start playing the video. So listen carefully, take down your notes. If you have any questions, please leave it in the chat, and we'll answer. but it's very important to listen and kind of keep noting things down, right? So let me start playing.
If you've been a software developer or worked in information technology for any length of time, you've seen hundreds, if not thousands, of products and technologies come and go. Some make huge long-term impacts on how we work and play, while others fizzle out. When a technology first appears, it can be difficult to know which of these paths it's going to take. In this course, LinkedIn Learning's technology staff instructor team shares their insights about products and technologies that have just appeared on the horizon. What are these new tools? Why are they potentially important? If there are controversies, what's being said on each side? And as a technologist, what do you need to do to learn more and prepare for how they may affect the way you work? I'm David Gassner, Managing Staff Instructor for LinkedIn Learning's Technology Library, and I'd like to welcome you to Tech Trends.
So this, I'll just pause for a moment before I play the next section. You will actually hear this from the who's and who's of the industry, in the technology industry, and specifically from the LinkedIn team, the worldwide global LinkedIn team, right? Who has the technological capability to actually kind of talk about this, because they are the ones who are actually leading these initiatives. So everything that you will hear, a lot of these examples have actually been developed by the people. So you will hear right from the horse's mouth, right? So let's listen to the first set of trend.
All right, picture this. A rapidly growing company is seeing more and more demand for its products. While the front-facing business thrives, the vast and varying data behind the scenes paints a picture of increasing complexity for its data analysts. Now, this company, like many others, recognizes the need for a seamless, efficient way to unify and analyze their data. Their mission isn't just to understand what's growing their business, but also to understand and evolve from within. In short, improving their data processes and insights to keep up with the core business. That's where DBT gets involved. DBT, or the Data Build Tool, is a tool that enables data analysts and engineers to transform and model data in the data warehouse.
So this tool is called as DBT, and why is it important is something what we learn, because we all understand that how important data is, and how the importance of data is not only about having data in the form of data, but how do you derive that insights from the data and make relevant impact in your business, correct? So one of the very important tools and the emerging technology, and you would have heard this name, or if not, like you're hearing it now, is Data Build Tools, which in short is called as DBT. Let's listen what this tool does more.
If SQL is the language to do this, then DBT is the framework around it that adds structure, testing, and documentation. It's best used when teams want to treat SQL like software, incorporating practices like version control, automate data testing and documentation, or make their analytics pipeline more modular and collaborative.
So these are the different use cases you just heard, like making the analytics more collaborative, and also making predicting the pipeline, right, and automating the data and the testing in terms of the documentation. That's the important part.
More modular and collaborative. A data pipeline with DBT can vary from company to company, but imagine a pipeline as a conveyor belt. At the start, raw data is ingested into the data warehouse.
Very important thing to keep in mind, what you will hear is the process right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different steps. So the author here is asking us to imagine this as a conveyor belt, and typically conveyor belts you would have seen in the airports, etc., where the luggage is kind of once you want to stand and collect the luggage, it kind of flows, and when your luggage comes in, you kind of pick it up. That's a conveyor belt. So in this entire process of DBT, how does step 1 to step 5 or step 10 happen is to be picturized in front of the conveyor belt. So let's listen to what those steps are.
With traditional ETL processes, you'd transform this data elsewhere and then load it, hence extract, transform, then load. But with dbt, you follow an ELT approach. The raw data is loaded first and then transformed within the warehouse. Extract, load, then transform. dbt helps you create, test, and document these transformations, ensuring the end data models are accurate, up to date, and ready for analysis. I'll also call out the dbt website, which has a wealth of use cases that puts a lot more detail and examples on how varied these pipelines can be. At its heart, dbt Core is an open source offering. It provides the foundational features, letting you run, test, and document your SQL transformations from the command line. On the other hand, dbt Cloud is a managed service built on top of dbt Core. It offers everything Core does, plus a web interface, schedule runs, and more collaborative features. Think of dbt Core as the engine, while dbt Cloud is the car built around the engine, providing additional comfort and functionality. To get started with dbt, I always encourage everyone to try something hands-on, to get a good grasp of what it is and how it works. But alongside that, diving into dbt requires a specific skill set. Understanding SQL is essential. It's the heart of dbt, and ultimately, dbt is compiling SQL for you.
So important thing to keep in mind. So if you are good with SQL, then you can actually do a hands-on training on dbt, right? But it's important to understand this language. So whoever is using this emerging technology of a dbt is supposed to be a SQL expert. Now, you can also kind of ask, while SQL all these years, there was an expertise that was kind of required, but with generative AI coming into the picture, one even need not be that of an expert in a SQL, because in the generative AI tools, you can actually put in the prompts and then you will get the output as you will get in a SQL, right? So you can also think of in those lines too. While you may be a SQL expert, or while you are using certain tools to kind of generate the SQL prompts, the important thing to keep in mind would be for a dbt, a SQL is very important, because that is how the technology kind of works, right? So let's listen more.
So you'll need a good graph of SQL in order to help you construct dbt models that take full advantage of the SQL capabilities. Linked to this, data warehousing principles can help inform your high-level approach to transformations and storage of your data for analysis. On the softer side, I often like to link some aspects of data modeling to problem solving. The skills to identify problems, think through them, debug them, and then build solutions around them is quite important. Often, you won't be doing this alone either, so you're likely building models for others to use. So collaboration will be another soft skill to call out here. And finally, data engineering is a fairly new role. It's a high-level sort of set of skills, but ultimately, the field is still evolving quickly. And so you want to be continuously learning and keeping in touch with what's new and how businesses are using dbt to solve challenges.
Great. So we have learned about dbt. Now let's look at the next trend, which is which is a part of the emerging technology, which is the Microsoft Developer Box. And it's a very interesting kind of a trend where Microsoft offers a very interesting and host it's a suite of various offerings that they offer, right? So let's listen to what a Microsoft Dev Box offers us and what is it all about.
Ask any programmer to describe their ideal development computer. I guarantee that every person will give you a different hardware and software wish list. The time to create a new computer that meets the developer and company requirements can vary. With traditional deployment methods, the IT team might take days to provision the new box. Cloud-deployed computers speed up this process. Microsoft built their DevBox service to address this trend.
So it's all about cloud-based deployment. and how Microsoft has built their developer box as a service to address this, so that it's a very quick deployment.
It's part of Azure, fits into your Microsoft IT management tools.
And Azure is nothing but Microsoft Cloud. So in the industry, there is AWS, there is Google Cloud, there is Azure, and Azure is nothing but Microsoft Cloud. And this is where this is being built. This offer or this solution is being built.
And supports a variety of configurations. Plus, it's fast to provision. You can have a workstation up and running in minutes. Microsoft DevBox is a service that lets you create and use high-performance, cloud-based workstations that are ready for coding. Your developers have the freedom to create their workstations in a self-service environment. They can choose from a selection of pre-configured dev boxes, which contain curated images prepared by their development team. These images come equipped with all of the necessary development tools, the code repositories, and the software development kits. As a result, developers can start working immediately as soon as their chosen dev box is deployed. These dev boxes are indeed easy to provision, but equally important, their management and security are ensured through centralized governance tools like Microsoft Intune and Microsoft Endpoint Manager. This means that regardless of where the dev boxes are operating, IT administrators and infrastructure teams have comprehensive and centralized device management and governance tools in place to track and closely monitor each deployed dev box.
Very important factor in any cloud environment or any projects that you do on cloud is the security aspect of things, right? Because at the end of the day, a cloud is not a physical location or a physical storage. It's all in the cloud, and that's the concept. So hence, what kind of security provisions does this offer? So to keep in mind the security thing, the Microsoft actually offers this various, it guarantees that there is a enough amount of security compliance that is kind of available. Right?
This oversight guarantees that security, compliance, and cost management are maintained throughout the system, providing a seamless and secure working environment for the developers and the organization. You can read more about Microsoft DevBox on this Microsoft site. Let's spend a minute talking about how to work in Azure to create dev boxes for a project. Microsoft built the system so that IT administrators, platform engineers, and developer leads can collaborate to do this.
Again, critical thing for you to keep in mind is all of these roles, like the IT managers, the developer leads, or the project managers. So a lot of times, you may actually end up getting into a role like this. So it's important for you to understand that, say, for example, if you're a developer lead or if you're an IT project manager, right? How can you use a tool such as Microsoft DevBox, which is on Azure, which is nothing but the Microsoft Cloud platform, to set things up and enable the coding from day one or the instantly itself, right? So that's the use case that the author is going to talk about, and let's listen what he has to say.
Here on the site, you can see this graphic that talks about the steps that you need to do to create a dev box. In this example on Microsoft site, the steps 1 through 6 are implemented by the platform engineer, and then all the developer needs to do is create the dev box. For example, the platform engineer might create a dev center. This is where they organize the project resources. Next, they'd configure network components to enable the dev boxes to connect to organizational resources.
All right. So we will not go through all the technical steps here because that's not something we would be learning in this class. But what is important for you to know is these are the various ways in which the things can be set up within the Microsoft Azure environment, like the setting of the developer centers, then the different environments, the development boxes, etc., etc., etc. Right? So let's move on to the next emerging trend, which is OpenAI and API, the application processing infrastructure. Let's listen to what that is all about.
In a very short time from now, you won't know, or in most cases even care, what generative AI system you're using. You won't even think of it as using AI. You see, the way we use AI right now as chatbots, you have to prompt a very specific way to get them to do roughly what you want them to do, is a short detour on our journey to our future with AI. Let me explain. When you check the weather app on your phone, do you ever wonder where this data is coming from? Or do you just assume Apple or Google or Samsung or someone is providing that data for you? Probably the latter, right? Well, what's actually happening is this app on your phone calls up an API, an application programming interface, from a specialized weather data service and requests real-time and predictive weather information for your current location. That API is, in the most basic terms, a programming interface that lets computers talk to each other without us humans getting in the way. The weather app and all the data transfer that happens invisibly behind the scenes is a good illustration of how specialized data services are integrated into the applications we use via APIs, and hints at how generative AI services will be invisibly integrated into pretty much everything we do, all through their own APIs.
So API is the key, right? So by using an API, multiple systems can talk to each other. And then as an end user, you get the output, which appears to be very seamless, right? So while the example here was taken and shown in terms of your phone showing the weather information, but in the backend, how is it working is through the API, which kind of gives us the real-time weather information. And hence this API, the open AI and APIs, right, is very, very critical and emerging trend, because it is making the end result appear much more seamless, so that like the users are having a very good experience. Let's listen more of the examples.
Now, as I record this, the main way we interact with generative AI models is through basic chatbots that surface the core AI system. We chat with ChatGPT and it provides responses. We request images from DALL-E and Midjourney, and they generate responses. In this direct interchange, we use standalone generative AI apps, and they generate output based entirely on their training data and whatever data we provide them with at the moment of interaction. In the immediate future and going forward, our interactions with generative AI will change from using standalone generative AI apps and services to using them as integrated parts of other services. And in this process, generative AI will go from being sources of information to being intermediaries and interfaces to information. This shift will be facilitated by APIs. To understand this difference, compare ChatGPT with the forthcoming Microsoft 365 Copilot. With ChatGPT, you get a chatbot that outputs coherent human language responses with information of unknown origin. With Copilot, you get contextual help by an AI system based on what you're currently working on. To which you're probably going to say, but Morten, these two are entirely different things. Not really. You see, Copilot is powered by GPT, the same GPT you talk to through ChatGPT. But because GPT has been integrated into Copilot through an API and is part of the larger product, you don't think of it as chatting with GPT. Instead, you think of it as Copilot. The underlying AI model is relatively irrelevant. That's what these APIs do, and that's how they'll change our interactions with the digital world. They make generative AI an integrated and largely invisible part of our interactions. Generative AI APIs provide an interface allowing developers to access the functions and features of API services like GPT and integrate them into their own products and services. They provide tightly controlled and configurable AI on demand, if you will. APIs allow us to seamlessly add AI features into the larger user experience of whatever service or app or platform they are integrated into. And done correctly, this integration will be substantively different from chatting directly with a GPT model. First, it likely won't use the core service, but instead a hosted, secured, and provisioned enterprise implementation of the API that protects the privacy and security of the company and its customers. Second, when someone interacts with the AI model embedded in an app, the app will often do the prompting behind the scenes and control what types of requests the customer can submit, what data is passed along with the request to the generative AI, what product data sets the AI has access to, and what types of response the AI can return to the customer.
It's very important to keep in mind, right? So ultimately, as a customer, we would want to kind of put in the input and get the accurate output. That is where generative AI and all the generative AI tools or AI in general as a solution, as a technology is supposed to kind of help us with. By using the various APIs, the various systems gets connected. And as the author says, that let's look at an example of how an input is kind of added and an output is kind of received. Let's hear to this example right now.
Say, for example, a legal firm wants to add a virtual AI assistant to their website to walk clients through the process of filling out basic legal documents for a lower cost. Instead of building a chatbot from scratch, the company can leverage an existing generative AI model like GPT through an API and incorporate it in a chatbot as a service feature on their website. This way, they can offload the responsibility of building and maintaining the AI to the AI service provider, so they can focus on building a customer experience around the AI chatbot by incorporating it into their existing services and customizing what the chatbot can do and what type of info it provides to the customer. Like I said at the top, soon you won't know or even care what generative AI systems you're using when you interact with an app, just like you don't care what specific weather data collection and prediction service your phone uses to tell you what the weather will be like tomorrow. AI will become a seamlessly integrated part of the apps you use every day if it isn't already. And that's all thanks to generative AI APIs.
That's the key message, that AI will become a seamless integration to everything that we use today. And how does that happen? That happens through the open AI, that is a generative AI APIs, right? While we're talking about generative AI and all these applications, let's actually listen to what is generative AI in a very simple manner. And then we will see a few examples of what kind of generative AI tools there are, right? And what is required for kind of looking into generative AI. So let's first listen to what is at all a generative AI.
Let's play a game that I think you're pretty familiar with. Take a look at these series of images. Could you predict which item should come next? Of course, it's this one. Now let's try again with a new set of images. Which image do you think should come next? Of course, it's the pumpkin. All right, one last time. Now you probably guess that it's this one. But have you ever wondered why you're so good at this game? You probably also noticed that these images had a similar theme, Halloween. Your brain stores tons of information about familiar objects, but it also tries to create rules in order to predict what is coming up next. Lately, we've learned that we can not only teach computers to do the same thing, but we can ask them to use that information to create new patterns. We call that generative artificial intelligence. Let's take a look at how it works. Computers are great at detecting patterns in a useful way. So for example, phone cameras are great at recognizing faces, and they can be trained to recognize if that face is yours. Now, they can do this by looking for patterns in the image. They map out distances in different parts of faces, which is called biometrics. It's easy enough for them to make a prediction as to whether that pattern matches what it knows about you. The breakthrough in generative AI comes when you realize that you can train the computer to create a pattern it's trained to recognize. Let's say you train a computer with some pictures of a series of noses. You can ask the computer to analyze the pixels in the image to learn what a nose looks like. With enough data, you can ask the computer to generate a series of new pixels that look like a nose. With enough additional inputs, you can imagine how this could be extrapolated to faces and then entire images. You can go to the site thispersondoesnotexist.com and have a generative AI create random human faces. Now, the site claims that 90% of fakes are not recognized by an ordinary person, and 50% are not even recognized by an experienced photographer. This type of analysis and generation can then be used on techniques like creating a deep fake, where you ask the computer to replace an existing face by training it on a series of faces you provide. It's also not limited to images. Pattern recognition and generation is being used to create original music trained by learning from different music genres. Tools like Compose AI use a technology called GPT-3, which has been trained on billions of learning parameters and can write human-like text. Now, that technology has been used by companies like GitHub in a tool called Copilot, which helps programmers write entire functions and cuts down the time it takes to generate code. Although generative AI is pretty impressive, it does have some limitations. First, it requires massive amounts of data in order to get really good at generating new information. Second, it doesn't always generate desirable results. In the case of something like Copilot, you can't trust that the code it writes will actually work. Now, third, it can't create anything new. This technology is only combining information from the patterns it already knows. It's a disruptive technology for sure, but right now it's best at helping humans process large data sets, generating tons of options, and shortening the time it takes to handle repetitive tasks.
Key message here. The importance of generative AI is about reducing the time, reducing the human intervention, and bringing in efficiency in the processes. These are the important aspects of things. Now, at the end of the day, Gen AI or the tools that we use are nothing but machine. So the more the machine learning happens, the more the ML happens in the future, or in the coming months, years, we will see more robust results coming out of the machine, because at the end of the day, it is all about how much you are able to train the machine with the right kind of inputs. But what's important is to keep in mind that how will you train the machine? What are the various prompts you would use, or what are the various use cases which you will do, which will understand, which will help the machine to understand that these are the kind of requirements the users have, and then over the time those results starts to show in a much more robust manner, right? So that is that's important. That's an important aspect to keep in mind, right? Let's also listen to what is and then we all have heard about ChatGPT. We have heard about the various, and we just heard about the Copilot. So let's look about what is Microsoft Copilot, which has, by the way, been launched right now and integrated with all the Microsoft suites. So if you are using a Microsoft Windows, etc., you are most likely to get Copilot. But let's listen what is a Microsoft Copilot? What's the Copilot for business?
GitHub Copilot got a big upgrade since its release in June 2022, and it includes a version for business. Here's what you need to know. Since the release, we've learned a lot more about what developers have been doing with Copilot. According to GitHub's research and usage data, Copilot has been generating 46% of developers' code across all programming languages and 61% for Java developers.
So this means that if the Copilot is being able to generate those codes, it saves a lot of time for the developers and the coders to actually go sit and start coding. They get the ready-made output. Now, the question is, after getting that ready-made output, you have to see whether it is working or not, because sometimes it may happen that you get an output, but that output is probably not that relevant, right? So that's the important thing to keep in mind, right? But and we are seeing some sort of questions being posted over here. I'll pause for a moment. Okay, so Ashik Nias is saying that there is a doubt, so maybe you can ask the question in the chat, and we can probably answer. And in the meanwhile, till the time the question is asked, I will continue with the conversation over here. But any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat. Okay, yeah. So what we were talking about is the coding and the developer part of things, right? So while you will be getting those ready-made codes, etc., it is very important to try and test them, and that is where the human intervention is still applicable. So tomorrow, if you are trying to get into a position or you are trying to get into some sort of a job where you see a lot of Gen AI tools are getting used, I think the approach would be where you would be working with the tools, but at the same time using your human intelligence to ensuring that the quality is kind of taken care of and the accuracy is kind of taken care of, and that is where the human interaction kind of comes into the picture, right? This is where the humans and the machines, they kind of work together. So it's not only about that machines are going to be doing everything all together. There's always going to be a requirement for the humans to be kind of managing that, because at the end of the day, a machine is a machine. So it's something very important to keep in mind. But you must also remember that these are the various trends which is there, and you will be facing this situations or the decisions that you will have to kind of make in terms of what is the skill sets you would want to kind of have or upgrade, or which part of generative AI is is useful, and how would you use those tools to ensure you are smartly and efficiently kind of getting the output and kind of working, right? So that's the point. That's the main thing over there, right? We are talking about GitHub Copilot, so let's listen more about that.
And in terms of satisfaction, 90% of developers are reporting they complete tasks faster with Copilot, with 75% reporting a better ability to focus on more satisfying work, which is the whole purpose behind Copilot. In addition to that, GitHub has improved the OpenAI Codex, the artificial intelligence model that parses natural language into code. Copilot used to look at the code that came before the insertion point to make suggestions. The new codex uses a model called fill in the middle, or FIM, which also looks at the code after the insertion point, so that it has more context about what you're trying to write. There's also a new lightweight client-side model that keeps track of your preferences and behavior as you use Copilot, so it knows when you've accepted suggestions, and it tries to be more accurate about what it serves. Copilot is also a lot better at preventing the suggestion of insecure code to users. GitHub is also now available for business, which adds enterprise features like license and policy management, plus proxy and corporate VPN support. The business plan is almost double the price of the individual plan at $19 per seat, but companies can choose to use Copilot without having to store their code on GitHub, and developers can integrate their code with other editors like JetBrains, Visual Studio, and NeoVim.
Okay, let's listen to more about GitHub Copilot in the scheme of artificial intelligence and what does it do.
GitHub Copilot is an artificial intelligence tool that writes entire functions for you in many programming languages based on the context of your code. It uses an artificial intelligence technology called GPT-3, which stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. It's a natural language processor that uses big data to predict what you'll be writing, so it can do things like answer questions or write sentences for you. Copilot uses a new algorithm based on GPT-3 called Codex, which focuses on software source code. Although it works with many popular programming languages and frameworks, it's especially good with languages that have lots of publicly available code, like Python, JavaScript, Ruby, and others. Microsoft, who owns GitHub, made a $1 billion investment in the company that created Codex, called OpenAI. The code is synthesized from public sources like existing GitHub repos. As more and more people use the tool, it will also train Codex and help it provide better solutions. You can activate it by starting to write a function with a meaningful name, and Copilot will attempt to create that function for you. Or you can provide a detailed comment that will be used to query the codex. The code it produces is not just copied from open source. It's brand new code generated by the algorithm, and it's surprisingly accurate. Think of it as the next generation of autocomplete. Although right now it's in its infancy, GitHub Copilot is poised to change the way you code in the future.
Exactly the point, which we have been discussing, that in the future, the way we code or how smartly we code or how quickly we code is all going to be determined a lot based on all these tools that generative AI is kind of offering, right? The another use case of generative AI is, and that's also a trend, is the facial recognition. And facial recognition is actually used across multiple use cases, maybe like the smart airports that you see, where you have a digital entry. It's all based on facial recognition. So for example, in India, we have the Digi Yatra. And Digi Yatra, if you have traveled in an airport, it's based primarily on your information, which is already saved in the server, and then based on your facial recognition, how it recognizes, and then it's a seamless entry into the airport, right? So similarly, facial recognitions are also used across various security things, whether it's in an organization or in a very high secured kind of places, etc. So how does artificial intelligence actually help in this facial recognition? How are they both related? What are those trends? Let's listen to that.
The other day, I got a message from a social media network that someone had posted a picture of me. The service wanted to know if I approved of the posting of this image. Now, here's the thing. I don't know this person who posted the image. I've never met this person. I don't know anything about them. Yet somehow, they had posted a picture of me. The photo was of a teacher in a classroom in a country I've never visited. And at first, I couldn't see where in the picture I was supposed to be. But then when I looked closer, in the background behind the teacher was a computer screen where a student was watching one of my courses. The facial recognition algorithm had scanned the photo, found that computer image of my face, correctly tagged it as me, and then contacted me to ask, is this a photo of you, and is it okay that it's being posted? This is facial recognition in a nutshell. Computer algorithms powered by the latest technologies, high-speed internet, cloud services, high-resolution cameras, machine learning, AI, and so on, that identify people based on a photo or video. So how does this all work? Well, it starts with data collection. For years, facial recognition companies have collected every available photo and video online and trained algorithms to find the faces, then find recognizable features in those faces, and then build models that make it possible to recognize faces from photos and videos. Anytime you or someone else uploads a photo of you to cloud storage or social media or any public place on the web, it's likely to be snapped up and used by these machines to train the models and improve the algorithmic representation of what you look like. Facial recognition is rapidly becoming ubiquitous. We can unlock our phones and computers by just looking at them. Smart doorbells use facial recognition to alert us when someone visits or leaves our homes. Malls and other public venues use facial recognition to track customers and offer them tailored services and marketing, and also to reduce crime. Government agencies use facial recognition to simplify and speed up identity. Schools use facial recognition to monitor students. Law enforcement uses facial recognition for crime prevention and investigation. Basically, whenever you're in the public or private sphere, if there's a camera present, there's a good chance facial recognition is hard at work doing its thing behind the scenes. Facial recognition is science fiction made real, and just like in the imagined worlds of science fiction, this technology has both positive and negative uses and outcomes in the real world. On the positive side, facial recognition can drastically simplify many interactions in our daily life, from unlocking your phone or even your door, to verifying your identity when you go to school or an event or even travel. And yes, facial recognition can be a powerful tool for both crime prevention and investigation. However, there's some significant issues associated with this technology. First and foremost, facial recognition is based on machine learning and so-called AI, and these tools and models underpinning the technologies are only as good as the data they're trained on. Countless studies and real-world situations have uncovered significant racial and other bias in facial recognition systems, sometimes leading to serious negative outcomes for people of underrepresented groups, including Black Americans being charged with crimes they did not commit due to misidentification by commercial facial recognition systems used by law enforcement. Secondly, facial recognition impacts our privacy. Facial recognition training sets, the images and videos used to create these algorithms, are made up of images lifted from the internet or collected by surveillance cameras, in most cases without our consent or even knowledge. In other words, even though you probably never agreed to your face being added to a facial recognition system, chances are it's already in there. And once your face is in the system, getting it removed is all but impossible. Combine this with the ubiquity of facial recognition in public and private spaces, and we are headed for an interesting future where someone or something will always be able to track our every move. Over time, these systems will improve and be able to tell the difference between me actually being in an image and an image of me being in an image, and the industry is working hard to reduce bias and misidentification. But, as I explained, the cost of this evolution is privacy, which may not be that important to you if you live in an open and democratic country, but may be vitally important if you are a political dissident in a country undergoing social conflict or political oppression or even war. So, here are some things to think about as facial recognition enters the mainstream. If you're a regular consumer using online services and going to...
Again, these next few couple of minutes, very, very important as to what are the few things we should keep in mind if, we feel that we are not comfortable with facial recognition, or we don't want to participate and this is an infringement of our privacy, and we don't want our data to be collected. What are the few things we should keep in mind whenever we are interacting online? Let's listen what they are.
To public spaces, educate yourself on where facial recognition is being used and how to opt out if you don't want to be tracked. Most online services, including cloud services and social media, have an option to opt out of facial recognition. If you're a developer working with facial recognition, make privacy by design and explicit informed consent central principles to your craft and product. Educate yourself on the very real problem of AI and machine learning bias, and familiarize yourself with existing and upcoming legislation, including GDPR, the Right to be Forgotten legislation in the EU, and CPRA, the California Privacy Rights Act in the US. And finally, if you're a company, an organization, or a government agency looking to implement facial recognition, deploy your implementation in a way that requires informed consent and apply due diligence when picking a vendor. Also, make sure you limit the scope of facial recognition to only apply when absolutely necessary and consider privacy and other related legislation. While it is convenient to log onto your phone with your face, and I appreciate social media networks telling me when someone posts a photo of me, it is worth asking this question. Is the cost of facial recognition to our privacy and security a price we are willing to pay? I invite you to join that conversation.
Okay.
Soumyajit, this is Professor Sarit Kumar.
Yes,
Director.
yes, sir.
I just thought I will just pitch in. I think
Yes,
this
sir.
is your first session with this college.
Yes, this batch.
Great. Students, you should understand that the expert sessions are basically going to be, they will be touching up into everything. Like, for example, today Soumyajit sir is giving you an idea about the application process of all the AI techniques which is being used. So, one by one, he will first tell you the overall picture, and then slowly your L2 is going to tell you the theory part of it. You know, how you are going to work on it. And the experts are going to just give you the application and the process part. So while he's showing you the videos, as well as he's showing you all the, application aspect, you try to understand that where all this AI is being used. Correct me, Soumyajit, you are covering that one,
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Correct. So you are going to have a varied picture, both national as well as international. What is happening in US, what is happening in Germany, what is happening in Europe, what is happening there. So he will give you an overall picture across the globe. And the L2, which is your offline teachers, are going to tell you mostly the application in the India-centric approach, where you are going to work initially. But Soumyajit and other experts will give you an international exposure so that you know what exactly you are going to get in AI, how AI is being used in the various areas across the globe. So you will also understand one thing, that while he is telling you the basic concept today, the application parameters will change from place to place. The application parameter need not be same in Europe, need not be same in Japan, need not be same in Germany. So they will go in that detail. Different experts will have a different type of, methodology of teaching. So students, what you should understand when you come for an expert section is an overall picture of the course. They will not dig deep. They will not dive deep into the course. That is what I wanted to tell you. So each and every levels, the the whole objectives are different. Experts will give you an overall picture, both national and international, usage parameter. See, the concept is same. For example, he was talking about ChatGPT, he was talking about OpenAI. Now, OpenAI, the usage, if you ask me, in India is still very primitive. Correct me, Soumyajit, if I am wrong. And if I am not, it is very primitive. But whereas in places like Oxford, in places like, Cambridge and all, it is at third level. Here in India, it is very basic level. For example, if you want to give a letter to some organization, you go to an OpenAI, you get a ready-made letter, you use it and you finish it off. This usage is very primitive, whereas the research usage of OpenAI is not yet very, very effective in India. Some of the research scholars are using it, but they're not. So what I am trying to tell you here is, whenever the expert comes and give you a session, please sit with an open mind. Don't sit with a closed mind. And my request is, whenever they are finishing one part of the module, please give your questions in the chat box. Students, I was sitting here for last 1 hour. What I'm seeing is that you are not interacting. Today being the first class, I do understand that you will have an issue on interaction, but as soon as you interact with them, more and more knowledge you can gain. Because otherwise, whatever he has, he will give it to you. He will not understand whether it is going deep or whether you are really understanding the scenario or not. So my request is, whenever Soumyajit, ma'am, Sabyasachi or anybody who is taking the class, you please interact with them in the chat box. They will answer. After every half an hour, they take your question answer. And no question is primitive. Simply listening might bore the people who are sitting on the other side and you also. So my request is, whenever a professor is taking a session, please ask them questions in the chat box and then answer it. Try. And I would request Soumyajit sir, last 15 to 20 minutes, let it be a question answer session, where you clear your doubts of a particular session, because at a time, they will be doing about 7 to 8 applications of a certain subject in one day itself, because their time is very limited. Your L2 will have more time, so they will do offline. But these people, they will have a very limited time. So make best use of them and see that at the end of the day, your knowledge levels is geocentric level, not India-centric. It should be geographically covered all across the globe. And they're giving you fantastic examples. They're giving you examples of how it is being used. Now, after some sessions, he will enter into case studies and some simulation, which is what the way he teaches. That is what I have seen. So that is the time when he will give you some projects which you are supposed to do. So students, please take these sessions as a very, very effective session. You are not going to get it. I can assure you, you are not going to get it. They are specialized people. They have used in their workplaces and they come with a wide amount of experience to give it to you. So make best use of these sessions. Wish you all the best. Thank you. Soumyajit, thank you very much for allowing me. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay. So I'll so after sir has said, I'll now share my screen again and we'll cover the next bit of things, right? All right. So we covered facial recognition, right, as one of the things. Let's also talk about and listen more. While we are talking about the various technology trends, right? We keep hearing about generative AI, we keep hearing about ChatGPT, etc. But what is important to note is, one of the fundamental things in generative AI is to get the output by putting in the right input. And by putting in the right input, all of us need to have some idea about how would we put in the prompt. Now, one can be an expert in prompt engineering, one can be just a regular, a person like myself. I'm not an engineer, but I can put in some prompts over there as an input, and this is the kind of an output is what I would like. But prompting is important, and how do we prompt, right? I think that's the important thing to keep in mind. right? So let's listen a little bit more about prompt engineering.
I'm Xavier Matriain. I'm VP of Engineering AI Product Strategy here at LinkedIn, and I lead generative AI initiatives across product and engineering. In the context of generative AI, a prompt is simply what you use to communicate with the AI. And it can be as simple as a question and as complex as a very complicated construct that includes a lot of different components. So generally speaking, a prompt can have any of the following: instructions, a question, input data, and examples. So what is prompt engineering? Prompt engineering is a new discipline that is appearing nowadays, and it's very hard to define because it's being created as we speak. But it includes all the necessary components to manage prompts at a certain scale. And as I said before, a prompt can be very complex, right? It can be as simple as a question, or it can be a set of examples. It can have instructions. It can have code. It can have all different kinds of templates. And if you need to manage that at scale because you're building a product that has an AI on the back end, that needs to be engineered. All that goes into engineering those prompts at scale, it's what we call prompt engineering. We need to also make sure that we understand the difference between the prompt creation aspect and then all the other engineering components that go with it. One of them is, for example, QAing. I mean, you need to QA prompts. You might have different variations of prompt that at scale, you want to understand their quality, and you're going to have some feedback loop that involves having maybe humans in the loop, evaluating different aspects and different components of the prompt, and then feeding that back into the engineering and the design of the prompt itself.
I'll just pause here for a moment. I think the important key to kind of remember here is, as said earlier, that not all of us are prompt engineers, but prompt engineering is a specialized subject. But even if we are not prompt engineers, we can still kind of put in a kind of a prompt which will help us to get the right output, right? And I think that is very important. So the basics of prompting for a generative AI, there are many such materials one can read online. There are some ready-made prompts that are kind of available, and with time more of these things will be kind of developing. But I think what is important is we look at those prompts and try and use these prompts in the tools to kind of practice, and that's the kind of key thing to keep in mind. So once again, emerging trend in technology, it's prompt engineering. If this is one field that kind of interests you, or if this is one field that you think might be helpful, yes, it is very kind of relevant, right? The other important emerging trend, or rather I would say it's emerged or already emerged to quite an extent, but it is still emerging, is what we call as the Web3, and then metaverse. How does Web3 kind of move into the metaverse? So let's listen about Web3 and also about metaverse as the emerging trends.
There's a good chance you've heard the terms Web 3.0 or Web 3 used recently, especially in conversations about the blockchain, decentralization, the metaverse, and the semantic or even spatial web. So what is Web 3.0? Why are we talking about it now? And what does it mean for you? Quick history lesson. Web 1.0 refers to the original web, where communication flowed in one direction from primary sources, typically corporations, media producers, and large organizations, to the visitor. Think news sites, search indexes, and online encyclopedias. Web 2.0 refers to the social web, where communication flows in many directions and information is created, shared, and maintained by everyone. Think blogs, social media, and crowdsourced knowledge platforms. Web 2.0 has been around for a long time, and it's still where we are today. Web 3.0 or Web 3 is a broad umbrella term referring to the future web made possible by and powered by a combination of current and emerging technologies. It's been referred to as the human-first web and the semantic web and the spatial web. And within these different descriptions, we can get an idea of what Web 3 is all about. While there's no one true definition of Web 3.0 yet, all the different definitions tend to land on the same key principles and technologies. Web3 is open and equitable, allowing everyone to take part and eliminating the need for a non-value adding middleman like social media platforms or search engines. Web3 is decentralized and trustless, leveraging blockchain technology to create immutable data records, allowing each user to control their own data and trust the data created by others without having to go through a central trust authority. Web3 is semantic, enabling computers, in particular AI and machine learning, to understand data and make meaningful connections without human or authority intervention. Web3 is platform agnostic, treating data as pure data and allowing the user to choose their own means of data consumption. And Web3 is spatial, allowing users to interact with data and information through AR and VR, as well as in the real world through integration with materials and objects beyond screens. The central premise of Web 3.0 today is it shifts power from intermediaries like hosting companies and social media platforms to the individual. You own and control access to your own data. The system makes it possible for you to trust person-to-person and person-to-company interactions like payments without having to have an intermediary like a bank or a payment portal. And you can access, filter, and parse data in whatever way and means are meaningful to you without having to go through a big company. In short, the Web 3.0 concept is a return to the original promise of the web platform: ubiquitous access for everyone through trustworthy systems without being exposed to monitoring, surveillance, and predatory features like behavior-based advertising. Sound a bit like science fiction? Well, that's because it is. Current estimates say the first meaningful implementation of Web 3.0 is still 5 to 10 years down the road. So for now, at least, when people talk about Web 3 or Web 3.0, they're using trending marketing jargon to talk about one possible future.
Yeah, while Web 3.0 is important, it also leads to what is called as the metaverse, the world of metaverse. And this is something which is also, again, very common in today's industry. So let's listen very quickly in terms of what is a metaverse, and then we will pause, and then we will pause for some Q&A, and we'll get questions and we can probably answer and interact, right? So, but before that, let's listen to what is a metaverse.
Oh, hi there. You may have heard about something called the metaverse, and you may be wondering if it's something that you should learn more about. So let's start by defining what the metaverse is. It's the natural progression of what the internet is today when taking into account what Mark Zuckerberg calls the feeling of presence. It's an immersive sensory experience. Let me explain that to you with one of my favorite games. I love playing ping pong, but a ping pong table takes up a lot of room in the real world. It's not just the table, but the room around the table. What an immersive experience can do is make your brain think that it's experiencing a new reality. The other problem with my game of ping pong is that it's hard to find someone who wants to play around the house when I do. Or perhaps someone that will be challenging to play with, but not too challenging. Now that's where the metaverse can step in by giving you a virtual environment that makes you think that you're there. I can play against a robot that challenges me at just the right level. The space I need is minimal, and the computer can match me with players of similar skill level on demand from all over the world. That virtual environment changes your perception of reality, and it can make you feel like you're moving around anywhere in the world, or even anywhere that's out of this world. It's also the merging of the digital and physical worlds. Like Satya Nadella said, the metaverse enables us to embed computing into the real world, and the real world into computing. You can ask the metaverse, for example, to learn about your physical store, run layout optimizations, pricing variants through a set of virtual customers to figure out how to best utilize your space and maximize profits. It could give you real-time stats when you're watching a game at a stadium and update your fantasy league. Now, hopefully you can see the possibilities are pretty awesome, but you may be wondering if it's something that you should worry about right now. According to Qualcomm, Meta sold 10 million Oculus Quest 2 headsets. Meta also announced that their content store had surpassed $1 billion on purchased VR content. and surpassed 51.3 million in monthly revenue in January 2022. The metaverse is already here and having a real business impact, primarily in gaming, but that's about to change. Microsoft, our parent company, has big plans for the metaverse. You may have heard about their $69 billion purchase of game publisher Activision, or their $7.5 billion purchase of Bethesda. This purchase is not just about the games, but also the environments, the developers, the code, and the user base. This gives them access to hugely popular brands like Call of Duty, The Elder Scrolls, Doom, Fallout, and Warcraft. Beyond that, it gives them huge amounts of development talent that understands real and virtual worlds, plus the technologies that understand how to manage millions of real-time users in a three-dimensional environment. Every other major technology and entertainment brand, from Disney to Apple to Sony, is right in the middle of working out their metaverse strategy. So how do you fit in? Now, companies are getting ready to provide you with the tools that are going to fundamentally change how you do business and leisure. Think about how the internet changed everything. It's about to happen again in the metaverse. So get ready for a new world coming sooner than you think.
All right. So we will pause here, and we'll open up this forum for any kind of Q&A or any kind of questions, etc. that you have with respect to these this current session, the different topics that we kind of talked about or heard in the videos. Anything that you have in mind, anything that you think you would want to know more. So I think let us open this up for Q&A. You can either post your chat or you can kind of ask the question in the Zoom as well. So either or is fine. So questions are welcome. Anybody? Questions?
Soumyajit, I think today being the first day,
Okay.
they are a bit hesitant. So maybe as the days go by, they are maybe still trying to, understand what you have given. So I think today being the first day, let us not push it hard. You can always, if your sessions are over, you can talk to them. You can, ask them what is their understanding level, and then maybe a communication can start. What I have a feeling is these students are not yet free to talk, today being the first day. Maybe they are into a system of education where they are used to listening to professors and not talk. So our system is a bit different. So maybe to come into this system, they'll take some time. So I'm not telling you anything, but see what best you can do to open them up. That is what is my advice. They will not open on their own. This is what is my experience from the past college batches also. And I think you must have also felt it. The difference between the district and the colleges. College students need to be probed more. So I think you can carry on with your communication and see if you can open them. Today being the first day, I have my doubts whether they'll ask you any question. But students, I would advise you, ask anything, because no question is a foolish question. So a question means that you are trying to understand something. So my request is, please ask. We will not, form an opinion that you are asking a question which is, not up to the mark. So just be free and be very open. Your experts are very, very open. Any sort of a question, they will try to, clear your doubts. This is what we want, that at the end of the session, you should be very clear what he has covered today. So please ask questions. Don't feel bad or don't think that what the expert will think about your question, because we don't dive deep into your question. Yeah, carry on, Soumyajit, please.
Sure. Okay. So what we can do is we can probably do a little bit of quiz and a game. Let me share my screen again. Right. So let's see, there are some quizzes, and what we can do is I will ensure that I have this on the screen for you, and then we can see what are the correct answers. Now, what you can do is, like, when you see this, you can always kind of, put in the chat, like, what you think is going to be the correct answer. That way, I think you will be kind of, wanting to kind of, interact. You will also be kind of, trying to attempt certain, like, answers, etc. And maybe, like, if you have understood the topic and the subject well, then you are able to kind of, answer this as well, right? So let's look into, let's say, the first quiz, and I think the screen is kind of visible right now, right? This is the question. Question number 1. What is prompt engineering, right? Now, please answer in the chat, like, what do you think is prompt engineering? And all of you have, like, your chat available to you, so you can respond over there based on all the 3 options: 1, 2, 3. You can simply say 1, 2, or 3. That's good enough. You don't have to type or copy paste anything. But let's see, like, what the correct answer is. I can see some chats coming up. Let me see. Okay, Niharika says 1. All right. Is there any other answers? So Niharika says answer is 1, which means creating prompts used as input to generative AI. Okay. Is there anybody else with any other answers? Okay. If there is no any other answers, let's kind of see if Niharika is correct or not. So if I put in 1 and if I say submit, yes, that's correct. So Niharika, you are absolutely kind of correct in saying that what is prompt engineering? It is nothing but creating prompts used as an input to generative AI. Great answer, right? Okay, let's look into the next question. How does a general large language model generate a code? Is it writing and testing the code just as a human programmer would? Or is it statistically guessing each word to create a sentences that look like the code? Or is it pulling blanks of pre-compiled and tested code from the internet? So remember, the question is, how does a general large language model generate code, right? So it's more generic in nature. And the answer is amongst this 1, 2, or 3. So which one do you think is the right answer? You can paste in the chat. Any answers? And it's okay, even if you don't know and you're not an expert, that's absolutely fine. But read the question. It talks about, like, a general large. So it is more generic in nature. And we just heard from the various videos in an AI where it pulls the data from, right? So given that as a clue, what do you think is going to be the answer? Okay, since nobody has answered it, let me kind of try and see. Incorrect. Okay, statistically. Right. So statistically guessing each word to create sentences that look like the code. This method can create the tendency to repeat the code patterns found in the training data. Right. Let's look into the next question. What is GitHub Copilot? This is an easy one. Who wants to answer this? Answers. Who wants to answer this? Okay, I see it in the chat. It's Niharika again and saying 1. Is there any other answers from anybody else? Okay, Alfred says 1. All right, we have 2 answers which says 1. Anybody else? Okay, let's look at this. Okay, Advait also says 1. So we have 3 answers: Niharika, Alfred, and Advait, who says 1 each. So let's look into 1 and see, and I say submit. Absolutely correct. So all of you, Niharika, Alfred, and Advait, you are correct. because GitHub Copilot is nothing but a specialized AI programmer that is embedded in our code editor. ChatGPT, Microsoft Bing, GitHub Copilot can all be considered as like AI pair programming tools. And this is the overall package that Microsoft actually offers, because as you know that Microsoft has 49% stake in like an OpenAI, which actually produced ChatGPT. And recently, I think in the last 2 weeks, you would have heard a lot of news in where Sam Altman, who is the ChatGPT founder, who is OpenAI CEO, was first fired by the board. Then Microsoft offered him a job, and then he came back to OpenAI and fired the board, and now he's the CEO back again, right? I think there was a lot of news about Sam Altman and everybody. So I see a hand raised, and there is a question that somebody wants to ask. So please go ahead and ask the question. I thought I did see a hand raised. If you're not able to ask the question on the voice, you can also put it in the chat. Okay, while we wait for the question, let's move on to the next question here. How is GPT-4 different from GPT-3? GPT-4 is better at reasoning and producing concise answers than GPT-3. GPT-4 is notably faster than GPT-3 and requires less computational power. GPT-4 can generate new content from key inputs that users provide. And all of these answers are very close, huh? Because GPT-4 actually can do a lot of things. All right. Niharika says, answer is 2. Anybody else? Okay, let's see if answer 2 is correct or not. Wrong. So anybody else with the answers? Answer 4 is also wrong. So it's answer 1. Right? So GPT-4 is better at reasoning. And because it is better at reasoning, the point number 2 and point number 3 will come into the picture. Because the reasoning is better, that requires less computational power, and it can easily create a relevant output when you're putting in the input. That is something that GPT-4 is good at, right? So let's look at the next question. Okay. I think we did not look into this topic, so I will move on from here. I think the next question is going to be better. Yeah. All right. What is the characteristic of blockchain, but not a traditional banking? This is a in general quiz question. Not necessarily it is covered in this class, but in general, what is the characteristic of a blockchain, but not a traditional banking? Now, the other way in which you can always get this kind of an answers is, for example, in your screen, in the screen right now, you see I have just opened up Google Bard, right? It is the same thing as ChatGPT, right? So if at any point in time you want to get questions or answers to questions in terms of what is what, you can always use this Google Bard as a tool and get more. So here the question is, what is the characteristic of a blockchain, but not traditional banking? So you can actually use Google Bard as a tool. You can, and this is how you enter the prompt, right? And again, I may not be a master in prompt engineering here, but I will try to see if I can prompt it. So I will tell Google I want to know what is a characteristic of blockchain, but not a traditional banking? Let's see what Google Bard has to answer. Answer can be correct, answer can be wrong. We will have to see, right? Google Bard actually talks about a lot of things. It talks about key characteristic of blockchain that distinguishes it from traditional banking is its decentralized nature. There you go, right? Now, if you look into this answer, you will find there is a option called decentralization. Has anybody talked about it? 3. Okay, Ashmika had already mentioned 3 over here. So thank you, Ashmika. This is great. So this is decentralization, and that's the correct answer, right? But even if you do not know the answer, or at a lot of time we need to know that what is the right answer, this is the way to use Gen AI. This is a Gen AI tool, Google Bard, just like Chat GPT itself, right? It not only talks about it is a decentralized nature, it also talks about much more, a single point of failure or lack of transparency or high fees, and bank charges high fees for various services. But blockchain on the other hand has a decentralized system. So yeah, you will get all the information over here. So everything that you have listened or taken down the notes, at any point in time, you can start interacting with these tools. And this is right in front of you, a real-time example of how you can use a generative AI tool. Google Bard is more I would say, I personally prefer it because it gives you more latest information. Chat GPT gives you good information, but at the end of the day, it's all collecting the data from various sources. So Chat GPT data may be a little bit more older, but Google Bard is much more relevant because it is linked directly with google.com, right? But either way, you can use any one of these tools, but you can learn more. So even in your classes or in your questions, if you may have some projects, if you may have some kind of questions which you are thinking requires help, use these tools. Use these tools to get these answers and get the project. In a lot of ways, you can actually use this tool to actually get the right input, right? You can ask these tools questions in terms of your career. You can ask these tools in terms of questions about your skill sets, what kind of job opportunity you're looking at, everything, and the tool is going to give you a lot of those answers. So, somebody has to mute. Thank you. Let's go to the next question. The newest version of Copilot uses a model called fill in the middle. What does this mean? Answers. Anybody? The newest version of Copilot uses a model called fill in the middle. Okay, if we don't know the answers, then we can again go to the Google Bard and see what does it mean. This means that Copilot can now generate code in the middle of existing lines of code. This is a significant improvement over previous versions of Copilot, which could only generate code at the end of the lines. See, this is the answer. You have the answer right in front of you. Right? So then now tell me, then what is going to be the correct answer? Probably this. Oh, sorry. Copilot considers code before and after the insertion points in both this thing. So let's see who has answered this thing. I think Niharika also mentioned 2, but then sorry, 2 is not the right answer. It is 1. And the reason why 1 is correct answer, as you can see here, the newest version of the Copilot uses the model this thing. This means that Copilot can now generate a code in the middle of the existing line of code. So it's not only at the end of the code, it's in the middle as well. And this question is about before and after the insertion point. So hence, this is the right answer. Okay, the last question. Rajesh is considering integrating ChatGPT into his blog creation workflow. Which task is ChatGPT best suited for? This is a very easy one because I just showed the examples of Google Bard. ChatGPT is something very similar. Which one do you think? I think everybody should be able to answer this question. What is ChatGPT best suited for? I see one chat here. Niharika says 2. Alfred says 2. Who else? Anybody else? Anything else? Okay, let's see this. And that's correct. So Niharika and Alfred get 1 more point again. So good job, both of you, right? So, okay. All right, so we'll stop here, right? I think there is one hand that is raised I can see is from Sinan. Sinan, do you have any questions for us? Do you want to ask anything? I see your hand raised. Okay. I don't see it anymore right now. Okay, all right. I think I think this is where we kind of end today's class. I think what we learned overall is around the overall industry trends around various generative AI tools and how we kind of use it. We also saw some kind of a quiz, etc. And thank you for like a few of the people who Niharika and others who participated in the quiz. I think this is how we typically kind of interact and we kind of learn in terms of like what questions and answers are and how do we want to learn more about things, etc. Right? So I think we'll continue doing this more as today is the first class. We kind of got an understanding of how we will be dealing with classes in the future as well. So we will have these kind of sessions. We will have Q&As, and of course we'll have more of assignments, etc. kind of given too, which you should also be comfortable in kind of presenting in the classes. So so yes, I think this is what it is. So is there any other last final questions that you have before we kind of end the class? Okay, if not, I think we are good. So I think Kionix Karnataka team.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think we can end the class today, and we'll see them again in the next class.
Okay, sir.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.